So for our homework, we want to create a vehicle selector, just like they have on AutoZone.com. So when you load the AutoZone website, at the top up here, add a vehicle button. Click on that button, and you can see you choose by year, make, model, and engine. Now notice make and model are disabled. We can't click those. So if we select a year first, we'll choose an older year. There are less makes and models. Studebaker 1931, and then the models that are available for that Studebaker. Now, if we were to change this to a Ford, then the models update, and they're specific to Ford. We still can't click an engine until we select a model. So that's what we want to build. We want to use React to do it. So we're going to build this dynamic select box setup. And the data that we're going to use, I've prepped for us. You can find that in Sakai. You'll go down under resources, and there will be a link for vehicle data, and that'll open a gist here in GitHub. So gist is like a lightweight repo. And so I have two files in here where there's a README explains where the data came from. Nate Barr gives us this data as a SQL dump. I've turned it into JSON automatically to use that for class. And I have two versions of the same file. I'm both calling this vehicle flat. As we discussed in class, I'm just calling this a flat record. Everything is in one big array, and so there's just multiple groups of data, and these are flat, so they have properties, ID, year, make, model. And we need to turn this data structure into a tree, a type of graph, so that we group our data. When we select a year, so when we say 1930, selecting the makes is just a property of the data set that's already keyed under the year of 1930. If we didn't do that, we'd have to search through this list every time. So when we select 1930, we'd have to run through this list and find anything where year was 1930. And then we would have to pull all the makes out of there. And then when somebody actually selected which make they want, so we'll say they wanted Ford in 1909, this one's easy. There's only one record for Ford in 1909. But when we get a little later in the years and there are more models, we're going to see Ford repeated over and over and over with all their different models. And so that repetition across one, two, or multiple keys is a hint that we can structure this in a tree form. So we'll get started with that. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to open up code. And once we've got Visual Studio Code open, we can push pause right here and go over to GitHub. And so we'll just load up github.com/MEJO583. And instead of week 11, homework 2, this is week 12, homework 1. Once we have this open, just like I did with our last homework, we're going to click the fork button up here and just fork this repo over to your account. Now you can hit this refresh button and see when it's done. And then from your repository, so again, we're on my fork, so your username should be here. So you're not going to clone or download my repository, you're going to clone or download the one that you have forked. So you should see your username up here, your username in the URL, and you'll just hit clone or download. We're going to use the HTTPS URL, so I'll just hit the little clipboard icon there and copy that URL. And I'll jump back over into Visual Studio Code, and I'll do a new terminal. And I'm in my home directory, and so you can fire off pwd, that's print working directory. You can see the current directory you're working in. I'm in my home directory, so I will just make a new directory. So we'll just say this is our homework demo. And so mkdir made that directory, and then I'm just going to cd into homework demo. I'm going to type in clear so we can see that a little better. Let's move this up, make the font a little bigger. And so then I'm just going to type in git clone, right, and paste in that URL. Again, you're looking for your username here, not mine. So you want your fork that you're going to clone down. And we'll fire that off, and so it'll clone the repository down, and we can do an ls here, and so we can see that there is now a week 12 homework 1 folder, and this is the folder that we're going to want to start working out of at this point. So we'll go to File, and we're going to do New Window, and I'm going to close this window back here because we're done with that one. Close this tab, top left, Explorer, and we're going to do Open Folder. You can also go File, Open Folder, either of those, same thing. And so we'll go into our homework demo folder that I created. You put this wherever you want to put this, however you want to organize stuff on your computer. But here's this week 12 homework 1. That's the folder we want to open. So we'll hit select. We opened up here in another new window. And what we're looking for is that here in this bar, notice we can collapse these, open editors, outline. We want to see that it says week 12 homework 1 here. Yours should look just like that. And it's just like we did for our last homework. And so we have our ESLint RC JSON file in here. It's already set up to use ESLint, React App, and Google. And so at this point, we're ready to start our React app. So we'll just hit New Terminal. It opens over here. Once again, look, it shows the directory here that I'm in, homework demo, week 12, homework 1. Once again, sorry, I am in bash to do this work. Get bash was installed. So pwd, just to confirm, I'm in this directory, and ls, the contents match up. Now notice it just shows readme. These files with dots in front of them are not shown. So we will do create React app vehicle picker. Now, this happened last time. If that works on your computer, great, you should be done. For me, I have to use npx. So I already have Create React App installed. We took care of that for our last homework. So I'm using npx to locate the binary. Great. So once our npx Create React App runs, we are left here with these tips here at the bottom. This is very important. You have to cd into the vehicle picker directory. So we can copy that and paste it in, cd vehicle picker. Notice our path changes here. And now I've updated the README with some instructions. So I'm going to pull this down. So create a new React app called vehicle picker. So we've done that. This is just in the README of the homework that repo that you've forked and cloned. And so here it says there's this nice little reminder, change to the React app directory. That's what we just did. And install ESLint config Google. So we'll just copy that and we'll run npm i -- save dev ESLint config Google. Great. Now that that's finished, we've installed the Google ESLint configuration that we're extending. So once again, if we look in ESLint rc.json, we have this Google style guide that we want to extend with. And so in order for that to work, that has to be installed. So we've used npm to install that package, and now we get to share in that code. So we have ESLint, the configuration file is here. We have ran our create React app command, created the vehicle picker directory. We went in there, we installed the Google style guide, package.json. Now, if we go look in here, because we did that -- save dev, we will see that developer dependencies, ESLint config Google is in here, and the version that we're at for that. And at this point, we have to tell ESLint how to use this. I'm sorry, not ESLint. Pardon me. Let me back up. We need to tell VS Code how to use this ESLint configuration. I also put a note in the README about that. So if we scroll down, oops, wrong README. The README in the root of our repo. There is a note here on the VS Code config. Ensure you have the ESLint extension installed. So we'll just go over to extensions on the left-hand side. Enabled, there's an entire list here. ESLint is down here. It's installed and enabled. If it's not, you can just search up here for ESLint, and there will be an install button right here if you don't have it installed. And so we have to adjust the settings for that. And so I've got the setting we want to put in here. I'll just copy that. And then right here is a reminder, don't forget to uninstall or disable Beautify if you have it installed, which we do in this case, and that's going to mess with our code. So we'll just hit disable for the workspace and hit reload. It said reload required there, so we just click that button. Now we're ready to configure ESLint. So we'll go to Windows users, it's File Preferences. Mac users, it's the VS Code. It'll say Code at the top of your window there. So then you'll go Code Preferences. And so we'll go under Settings. I'm going to close my terminal here so we can see. Under User Settings, Extensions, ESLint, we just want to make sure Auto Fix on Save is checked under User Settings. And then under workspace settings, so we're talking about the settings just for the workspace we're working in, we will click on ESLint again here in this left-hand column under extensions and scroll down to ESLint options, and we will click edit in settings.json. And if yours opens in two windows in a split tab, we're working on the right-hand side. And so we'll just click in here and paste what we copied out of the README and hit save. So we're saying ESLint options, config file, capital F. We want to use .eslintrc.json. Back to the top left, click on Explorer, and we can see that's the name of the file in here. So at this point, we'll close that. We'll close our settings tab, Control-Shift-P for Windows users, Command-P for Mac users. We get the command palette open here. If yours looks like this, and you see some file names and it says type question mark, just throw a greater than sign in there, and you'll get here. And so we just want to type in reload window. Notice there's two options. We want reload window, just developer reload window. So click that. VS Code will reload, and we want to confirm the ESLint is working. So we'll just open Vehicle Picker. We'll go into Source. We'll go into app.js. As this runs, we should see if our extensions kick in, does any linting or highlighting. You can go to View, Output, look in this dropdown. If you do not see ESLint, make sure you have ESLint installed. At that point, you can click on ESLint. There's some information in here. Don't worry about these warnings. What we're looking at is that the ESLint library was loaded from, and then where it's actually loading ESLint from. And so in my case, it loads it from inside the node modules in my vehicle picker app. And that's what we want. So you should see the same thing I see. You should have some red squigglies underneath these strings. And if we highlight, hover over those, we will see that it says strings must use double quote. All we're going to do is click inside this file and hit Command S or Control S to save this file, and it automatically fixes our linting issue. So now we've got React set up. We're ready to get started. So we'll move on to downloading our data and getting started with the app. So to continue working within our project here, I'm going to close out app.js, and I'm going to go back into Chrome. Again, you can find this file, the link to this gist. The page is taking a second there to render. You can find the link to this in Sakai under Resources, says Vehicle Data. I've got the pretty print version of the data here. We're just going to use this vehicle flat, just one line or file here. And I'm just going to click on the raw link. So when I click that button, raw, it opens this new link. I have an extension installed here in Chrome. You're welcome to install that. In your Chrome, it's a JSON formatter extension, and so it just formats this, pretty prints it on the screen. So your screen will probably look like this, which is good. So we're just going to copy the URL, and we know that's the first thing we're going to have to do. We're going to have to do something with this data. And for us, instead of manipulating this data every time the application loads, we're going to pre-compute our tree. So we're going to write a little utility script that downloads this data and transforms it for us. And so that's what we're going to cover in this section. So I'm back in VS Code. I open up the vehicle picker directory here, just hit that little arrow to expand that. And you can see there's a few folders already in here. Public is where any of your static resources go. It's where the root of the application when we do a production build lives. So that's where our index.html is. Our favicon.ico is in here. So we don't want to put a utility script in there. That's going to get published, and it would go out to our public site, and that's not necessary. The source folder contains all of our JavaScript files to run our application. We're talking about building a script that just runs locally. We're just using it one time. I mean, we may run it over and over and over, but we're using it as developers to do our work. This isn't something that our application is going to run on demand. And so the way I like to structure this, what I'll encourage you to do, we just click on Vehicle Picker up here, make sure that's selected, and look up here to the top, and we'll just hit New Folder. And we're going to make a folder called Utils. And then we'll just make sure that's empty. Click that little arrow there, but just make sure Utils is highlighted, and we'll hit New File. So we're going to create a new file in that Utils directory. And I don't remember what we called it in class, since I'm re-recording this after the work we did in class. But this can be anything that has a useful name for you. So I'm just going to say this data is going to be manipulated and transformed. Maybe we'll call this script data tree transform.js. Right, so we're making this new JavaScript file, and we're transforming our data into tree. That's what we want to do at the end of this. So we currently, if you didn't do this one more time, copy the URL to the raw JSON file. Back here in code, we're just going to declare that as a variable. A few ways to do that. This isn't going to change, so we're going to use constant, and we'll just say our data URL is equal to a string, and we paste in that value. So that's a pretty long value. It's kind of hard to read, and we'll save the file. Notice we got some red squigglies. Unexpected token const data URL. What did I do crazy? That all looks right. Oh, cost. Sorry, const. Yeah, there we go. Const data URL. Now we see data URL is assigned and never used. So that's correct. We're not using it. The next thing we're going to do is this is just good housekeeping. Whenever we write a file that we're going to execute as a script, something has to happen in the body of this file to actually make it do anything. We could run this file right now and nothing would happen. We can toss in here a console.log data URL. We'll just save that. And then we can go to terminal, new terminal. And in here we can do console.log. We can do node. So we're saying, hey, run JavaScript on my laptop. So that's the node command, node. And then, I'm in the wrong directory, cd vehicle picker, and then node, and the path to that utils / data tree transform.js, and hit enter. And so it just console logs that URL out. So that's what we want to see. So that's good. But the housekeeping side of this, where I was going here, a good thing to do is just make a function and call it main. And this will be the main body, the main purpose, the main part of code, right, that this file executes. And so we put that console log back inside of there and save this file, and we can run it. And notice it doesn't do anything. Even though we have this console.log in here, it doesn't do anything. So to get this started, even though we've defined main, we still need to call main. So we'll toss that in, save it, and then run it. I did notice something as I was typing. It's putting in 4 spaces instead of 2. So somewhere I need to flip that setting. So let's set that to 2. And so every time I hit tab, now it'll put in spaces and it'll put in 2, which is what we want. So I have a main function. I am calling my main function. I have data URL. Inside my main function, I'm logging out that data URL. We talked about this in class, but I am lazy. I want to load this data URL, and I want to do that using the same way I do it in a browser. I want to do that with fetch. So once again, pay attention to what directory we are in terminal. We are in our week 12 homework 1, and we're inside vehicle picker. So if I do an ls, I have a package.json and a package.json, right? That's the directory I'm in. Those already exist. And so I'm going to run right here npm I, so npm install --save, and I'm going to say node fetch. And so you can look this up. So we'll just go over here and we'll Google node -fetch. And so this brings the browser functionality of fetch inside Node. So they work just the same. And there's some usage, there's some installation, some usage. So we just ran this right here. We just put the save in front of it. And then there's usage is down here. we're fetching JSON, we can just copy this right here, and we got exactly what we need. So we'll jump back over to VS Code. So that ran, it's installed, we have node fetch now. I'm going to just paste in that code I copied. Now before we can use fetch, I kind of blew past it here. We have to somehow include that code. So it doesn't work like the React includes do. We're not importing, we're going to use require. So we just say constant variable fetch equals require node fetch. So it's going to load this code from this library in, and it finds this inside our node modules directory. That's where it's going to look to find that. And we'll have access to it under fetch. And so at that point, I'll just hit save. Our linter runs. It's mad about the console.logs. That's okay. And so we're going to fetch this string. We don't want to go get that data. We want to fetch data URL. So we're going to make a call off to our data URL. We are then going to handle that response by calling there's a method in there that loads the content out of the body, response.json. So it's automatically going to return the body of the response into JSON for us. This returns a promise, right? So notice there's a fat arrow. There are no curly braces. So response.json returns a promise, and we are returning that promise from this callback. So this is implicitly returned. So we can chain another .then on here that fires when this is resolved. That will now have the JSON data. And so instead of console.log JSON data, because there's a lot of data in there, we'll just do .length. And so a reminder, I think I closed that tab, I navigated away, hit my back arrow a couple times. If you look at this data, mine's formatting the parsed view, but if you look at the raw view, there's a little square bracket right there. That means this is an array, right? So we have a square bracket, and then we have curly braces, comma separated. So this entire data structure is in an array. And because it's an array, that means we can call JSON.length, and that's what we'll console log. So I'm just going to hit save on that. Come down into terminal and hit clear. Oops, wrong command. I hit my up arrow. Let's do clear and back up to our node command. So node utils data tree transform.js, and it still console logs out our data URL. And then a little bit later, it console logs out the length of that data. So we have 7,268 items that we are now ready to transform. So I'm going to close out terminal for a second so we have a little more room, and we can start to talk about how we are going to compose this file, make a composable program and compose this file with multiple functions.